There's a brand new Monster Hunter game. Ugh, that delicious drug being Monster Hunter Rise. And unlike the previous game, Monster Hunter World, this one has returned to portable handheld consoles, the Nintendo Switch, meaning you can finally once again play it in the open world.
Vaccines give clear hope for the future, but for now, you must all stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Well, I guess you can also play it in bed. Well, it is Monster Hunter, a game that is all about fighting various monsters of differing sizes and ferocity, all with the goal of killing them and eventually wearing their flesh. It's not as weird as it sounds. Oh, it is a classic series that is riddled with all sorts of fun and weird quirks and oddities. I love it a lot, and seemingly have even styled myself after a great Jagras as of late. And it is just full of hot lizard action. The Monster Hunter games are easily summed up in its core feedback loop that thrums heartily through the whole game. Fight a big monster, see that it can look cool as a sword or a hat, kill it some more, make the skin suit, fight a new monster, see that it looks cool in a sword or a hat, fight it a bunch, make the skin suit, fight a new monster, see that it looks cool in a suit or... Ooh. It's a good thing I don't have a highly addictive personality, because otherwise this easily accessible and constant positive feedback loop would have me feverishly playing way deeply into the night. The whole point of the Monster Hunter games is one of progressive mastery, as you become more and more acquainted with the systems and monsters. You'll start out just trying to stab a monster to death. But over time, you might learn about hitting it with a status ailment, capturing them with traps, and exploding them with explosives. The Monster Hunter games are a perfect example of a game with a moderately medium skill floor and an ever increasingly high skill ceiling as you learn more and more of the various mechanics involved. Like, I don't know, whatever affinity is, or paying attention to the skills on the various armor. I don't even fully understand most of them, and well, I've played a number of these games now. Or you could, I don't know, get involved in the many different weapon types and try and master them all. These different weapons range from the sort of things you'd expect. Big sword, slightly smaller sword, two swords, and then they progress to weirder and more niche examples, like something a little more explosive. Something confusing with bugs, and then also something musical. The point is that whichever weapon you pick to play with will have you starting out stumbling around, trying to just hit the monster. But as you play more, you'll learn the ins and outs of these unwieldy large hunks of monster flesh. You'll be learning more and more combos and what skills to use when and then you're playing Monster Hunter. Maybe you'll want to try different weapons based on what looks cool. You see, I normally used the Charge Blade in like the last two games, but this time round decided to try the Longsword, and let me tell you, I have no clue what I'm doing. But it does get murderous results. I realise I'm basically still trying to explain why Monster Hunter as a concept is good, but you really need to understand that what these games do to your brain It's quite something. Murder is a hell of a drug. I'm aware that this type of game really won't be for everyone, but for those that will like it, good gravy, are you going to really like these games? They are games of like pure gameplay, similar to that of Animal Crossing, except for, I guess, instead of befriending the animals, you're wearing the animals. What I mean is, like, realistically, there's not that much substance involved in the games, like, fundamentally. However, what you get from the games is kind of what you put into them, and you just end up having such an amazing, fun and spiritual experience with them. The litmus test for this type of game is a simple scenario.
So tasty!
You found a new monster and it is kicking your ass. You could probably brute force it with enough goes, sure, but you want to make your life a little bit easier. You notice that it's doing big electric attacks. So you look into making some armor that's resistant to electricity. But it could take you a few runs to get all that delicious flesh. And you notice that that monster is weak to fire. So maybe you're looking for a sword that does fire damage, which requires you to kill a different third monster. So you're finding yourself hunting a monster a bunch to make a sword, so you can then kill another monster a whole bunch, but more efficiently, so you can make some armor that'll make this third monster, your main target, easier to kill. This may sound really, really tedious, but you're wrong, because it's actually really exciting. Like, it's the sort of excitement that I assume people who make to-do lists or shopping lists get out of life. Except for here, instead of just, I don't know, buying eggs being on your to-do list, every single entry on it reads, harvest flesh. You can just go from monster to monster, rapidly ploughing through the game and the missions, just barely getting involved, just killing a monster once, and it's dead. Or you can get upsettingly involved in crafting armor and weapons and learning that this is apparently really good against this. So, the Monster Hunter games are great. I'm glad we've now established that. But let's talk about Monster Hunter Rise. Now that it's on handheld, you can take it anywhere in the world. Except it's not the one called Monster Hunter World. What's up with that? Instead, it's called Monster Hunter Rise. And you might be thinking, why is it called Monster Hunter Rise? And to answer that question, we go to Chris with the weather. Yes, thank you, Chris. Monsters are on the rise across the country. Coming in along this cold front, we are getting a wave of monsters like many thought had long since been abandoned. And if we were to zoom in here, just here right now, you can see that we are getting even more densely populated areas of monsters, such as here and here. Will these monsters ever be stopped, or will they continue to rise unstopped? This humble weather reporter doesn't think so, and things do not look good. Back to you in the studio, Chris. Thank you, Chris, and I hope that clears everything up. Monster Hunter Rise has a number of different mechanics and systems introduced. Most notably, of course, is that you now have a fun dog companion to go alongside your cat, and it is great. Sure, they're meant to be like a more attack-orientated partner to counter the cat's support skills, and you can ride on their back to get around quicker. But none of that matters because look, you can dress your pets up and they're both adorable and dumb. Oh, I love them both. While yes, you could talk about using your hecking pupper to move around the battlefield while trying to reacquaint yourself with the living, the main times you'll notice your dog are during the times when you're chasing a monster down or getting around, and it is alright. Like, It's perfectly fine as a concept. I love them because they're a stupid dog that I can dress up, but they are just another animal companion to drape in monster flesh. Although, speaking of getting around, if you're familiar with Monster Hunter World, then you'll know that these games used to have large segmented maps that were vaguely connected, but have recently combined into large continuous forests or plains or something. And that's the same here. Now, however, you can get around with a grappling hook. And also it kind of sucks. The maps in Monster Hunter World were, well, incredibly intricately designed and involved, in that they had these incredible areas that all bled into one another and stacked upon one another, and unique biomes and unique areas that, well, everything felt alive. Like, I haven't played Monster Hunter World in years, and yet I'm fairly certain I can accurately plot out almost exactly the layout of the ancient forest. Monster Hunter Rise, however, well, the maps are notably flatter, but with like more verticality involved, but only for the sake of, well, adding verticality. The grapple hook allows you to fling yourself all over the place, but primarily upwards, over the never-ending amount of ledges in the maps, which you would think would add a great sense of verticality to these maps, but it really doesn't. It just adds a lot of tediousness. The first map is a great example of this nightmare, where you've got this middle area filled with lots of lumps and bumps. There are also no monster interactions here at all. They all happen around this outer edge, and getting around these pillars is a nightmare. A lot of the regions feel more disjointed and less connected than they once did, and there's a lot less involvement in the map, such as fewer environmental aspects for the monsters to interact with. A lot of the time, the maps do feel like big, flat expanses with a lot less excitement from exploring and finding more areas where monsters may lie. I remember the excitement of climbing the ancient forest for the first time and finding that dragon's nest, and it felt like there was so much more to the map than I originally ever thought. Here, well, everything feels quite straightforward. The maps are fine. Like, it is nice that everything is still open world and, you know, these large and expansive things, but not only are the map designs themselves, like, boring and unimaginative and kind of generic, but they also feel more like a number of connected set pieces, like the older games, which may not necessarily be what you want. And this is mired in frustration from any time you try and get around these maps while not using the clearly defined paths that the game was designed while, you know, zipping around with your grappling hook. But does this mean the grapple hook is bad? Well, no, because like any great game, you've got to get up on the Hydra's back. And yes, I will make that reference whenever I can. During the fights, using the grapple hook to fling yourself out of danger or headfirst back into danger feels great and adds just enough mobility that you feel like with enough mastery you can really shine. It is clunky enough to still keep in with the slow flow of everything else, but you can also just launch yourself into the monster's face, sword at the ready. If you can pull off enough aerial maneuvers to truly bedazzle your monstrous foe, you can use your grapple hook to mount them, and then, well, mess them up. You can either use it to knock about any other large monster nearby in a clash to make Godzilla blush, or just make them charge headfirst into the wall, over and over again. The special attack skills with your grapple hook are strong and satisfying to pull off, but can also rapidly become the focus of your combat tactics, because again, they are very strong.
I'm gonna get you!
But this monster grappling aspect means that when you're mid-tussle and your foe runs off, there is this burst of excitement when you see that they've run right into the jaws of another beast and it's time to learn the rules of the jungle. That you will kill them and you will wear them. There is one final addition in mechanics to Monster Hunter Rise, and well, I only kind of mention it because it's there, and not because it's any good, and also because it seems like it was meant to be quite a major addition, and that's Rampages. These are like semi-tower defense missions where you install a number of siege defenses to deal with oncoming waves of monsters. However, they are bad. Either I'm doing something extremely wrong and just not getting it, or every single combat ends up becoming very, very messy. You'll try and shoot the monster with a mounted cannon or ballista and, well, it'll ultimately do nothing and you just give up and decide to kill the monsters the old-fashioned way. With your bare hands. All while hoping that maybe your AI mounted troops will actually do something useful, and they really, really won't. And again, so much of this is made more annoying by trying to get around these large and kind of maze-like maps using the grapple hook. Honestly, they're not great at all, and are just things that I actively avoid. I'll do one every now and then just to see if I finally clocked out if they're meant to be fun or not. And the answer is no. Thankfully, they're pretty much almost entirely optional, so you don't ever have to think about them or look at them ever, which is great, because they're bad. Don't let this sudden vein of negativity bring the entire review down. Like, Monster Hunter Rise is still an exceptional game, and I love it so much. Let's just take a brief moment to think about everything that is wonderful and lovely in Monster Hunter Rise. Drifting around corners while riding your dog feels goofy and fun. The new monsters have such incredible designs that all work so well with the more traditional Japanese setting of the game. It is fast-paced and the encounters feel shorter, which could be great for doing a murder on your morning commute. They removed loads of those horrible egg gathering quests. Look at all this great and fun armor. No, not that one. Oh god, it looks like actual skin. Please, stop. Why have you put them all together? Oh, the grappling hook is fine and swings wildly between being fun and annoying. The streamlining of a lot of the systems is fine, but also removes a large chunk of the interaction in the map and the world that Monster Hunter World once had. The hub area feels small and compact and not nearly brimming with life as previous, and the story is kind of lacking in most of the second half is entirely focused through the multiplayer hub, which I'm not about, and the rampages. Oh god, the rampages. Look, Monster Hunter Rise is a great game. It's Monster Hunter. It is Monster Hunter at quite possibly its most accessible because so much of the chaff has been stripped away and left you with a really streamlined game. But I love Monster Hunter, right? And I kind of enjoy a lot of the chaff because it, well, made the world feel alive. But Monster Hunter is, again, a great game. It is more of that wonderful drug that I crave and just want to play. It is so nice to get lost down a weird rabbit hole of carving flesh to make armor and weapons that look nice and maybe I don't even need. But it's such a nice feedback loop. It returning to handheld means that more people will have more accessible time to play the game, which is great. And the fact that all the encounters are quicker and snappier and shorter means that, well, the game is more accessible, so more people can play it, which is great. And, you know, one day when all these things add up, they'll learn that Monster Hunter is a great series and they'll be monster huntering monsters. Oh, it's just a fantastic game, sure. It's not as good as Monster Hunter World. Well, I don't think it is. Doesn't mean it's not great, because it is, and the fact that it's on handheld is kind of almost how these games should be, right? In that it's just so much easier to pick up and play for a little bit, do a mission or two, and then just put back down and, you know, get on with your life. Easy peasy. Or if you're me, pick up, play a little bit, never put down, play more, and rapidly begin to realize that you're meant to be writing a script and you've not done that. I'm working on it. Hello, and thank you for watching my video about Monster Hunter Rise. It's a good game, it's quite fun, and I really like it, and I'm playing too much of it. Please, someone help. If you also have thoughts about Monster Hunter Rise, the rise of monsters that need to be hunted, let me know. Leave a comment, why don't you leave a like, etc, etc. Here, however, there's a video about a game called Bravely Default 2. That's what I last reviewed, haha. Or you can see my video down here, which is a really old one about Monster Hunter World, which I think is better, I'm sorry, oh no. Otherwise you can click on my face or to subscribe to the channel by clicking on my face. Thank you and goodbye.